500H F Sport Performance. You know what the H stands for?
What?
Hell yeah!
Oh,
There's a Japanese word, it's omotanashi. It means paying attention and anticipating your guests' needs. And that is one of the design philosophies behind this brand new Lexus RX, which I'm right in front of. This is the 5th generation, and there's a lot of attention to detail in this car. And in this video, we're gonna talk about the 3 different powertrains and the different trim levels. We're gonna try to give you an overview of what this new RX is all about. So of course we have the return of the Lexus Spindle Grille, and I'll talk about this in a second, but first let's talk about the 3 different powertrain options that you get. We start out with the 350 and the 350 F Sport Performance. That comes with a 2.4 liter engine, it's turbocharged, it makes 275 horsepower and 317 pound-feet of torque, and by the way, that's about 50 more pound-feet than the last generation. And you can get this in front-wheel drive. This happens to be an all-wheel drive version, and when you get the all-wheel drive version, you get an electric motor in the rear axle. There's a hybrid version, the 350H. It makes 246 horsepower, 233 pound-feet of torque, and that also has an electric motor in the back, and it only comes in all-wheel drive, and that is aimed at fuel efficiency. They're estimating it's gonna do about 36 miles per gallon combined. At the top of the line, we have the 500H F Sport Performance. Now it's a hybrid, but it is tuned for performance, so it doesn't get as good gas mileage as the regular hybrid does, and it has 367 horsepower and 406 pound-feet of torque, which is quite a bit. So we're gonna take all of these for a drive. We're gonna talk about how they drive. We're gonna talk about the transmissions. So let's get into it. All right, Ryan, 2.4 liter base engine, 275 horsepower, 317 pound-feet of torque. I think I got that right. Let's hit it. Front-wheel drive, by the way. And this has got a traditional 8-speed automatic transmission, a little wheel spin, going up a hill. And there's beyond 60. I think it's a little faster. In fact, it definitely is faster than the old RX. This has got about 50 more pound-feet of torque, even though the horsepower is a little bit less. It feels better, and this turbo 4-cylinder is pretty responsive. There's not too much turbo lag in it. I think this is going to be the vehicle that most consumers are going to buy. This is like the entry level, the base one. I think this is going to be the volume seller, in my opinion. This just feels a lot better to me overall in terms of the driving experience. It feels tighter. It feels less floaty. That was sort of my complaint before. That was sort of the old school Lexus, which was more into the Cadillac territory in my mind for the RX. This definitely feels a little bit more car-like. It feels a little bit more sporty. The damping is a little firmer. The spring rate seems a little bit higher, yet the ride quality is still really good. So we're kind of hoofing it along a little country road here. And you know what? I do like the steering in here. I'm not like usually a fan of Toyota steering systems. They tend to not have enough weight or feel for me, but this is pretty good. Now, the seats in this base trim level are not really going to hold you in, but I don't think most people are buying it to go around corners exactly. So here I'm going into a bend perhaps too fast, and it slowed me down. Definitely let off the power. So there's definitely some safety systems in here which are more interactive than the last generation. They're noticeable, to me at least, but they're not overly intrusive, I don't think. I don't think most people are really going to mind it. The whole design language and the whole aesthetic of this vehicle is pretty similar to the NX, which is a little baby brother to this. So the interior is very similar. The exterior design language is pretty similar too, especially with the spindle grille and the bar taillight that goes all the way across the back. So they're kind of bringing a design harmony across the line, and I think we're going to see that with future Lexus products too. So you're able to operate this with your voice. It seems to work pretty well for the most part. It doesn't always get all of my requests right, but it's definitely better than the system was about a year ago when this launched with the NX. But I can do things like, hey Lexus, set temperature to 67.
Setting the driver's temperature to 67 degrees.
But let's see if it'll do fan speed. Hey Lexus, turn up the fan. See, it doesn't do things like that. Hey Lexus, more cowbell. More cowbell, Lexus. Yeah, it doesn't do that so well. This is the 5th generation of this platform. It's now on the GAK architecture, they call it, and this is brand new from the ground up. This platform is shared with the NX, which has a lot of design language and similar with this, and it's also shared with the Toyota Highlander. And they're saying that this platform is about 200 pounds lighter than the last generation. So you're gonna get better fuel efficiency and should be a little bit better handling as well. So dimensionally, this is the same length as the outgoing RX. This is 192.5 inches. But what they've done is they've actually stretched the wheelbase by 2.4 inches, and that's supposed to give us a little bit more passenger room inside. There's supposed to be more space between the front seat and the back seat. And also what they've done, they've got a revised multi-link rear suspension, which is more compact, and apparently it is a little bit better damped too. So not only is it smaller, giving us more passenger space, but it also gives a little bit more space for the battery and cargo space down there too. And the ride is supposed to be better. So this is made with stronger materials and more structural adhesive, and so that's how they've reduced the weight. The Spindle Grille, of course, has returned, and what's interesting about this now is that it sort of flows and is integrated more into the entire front fascia. So instead of sort of standing separately, it is flowing into the front fascia, and we have these little sort of diamond shapes in here too. Now the F Sport Performance has a different front grille, so there's 2 different versions of this, and the F Sport Performance has a completely separate front end, and the rear is a little bit different too. Lexus is undergoing sort of a brand revolution, and what they've done lately is they now have this thing called the Toyota Shimoyama Technical Center. It is a racetrack that is a small version of the Nürburgring in Germany. And so it has a variety of corners, a variety of turns, and when you take a vehicle out there, you really stress the components. So you can test its handling, braking, ability to handle heat. And the whole core philosophy behind it is to make the car more of a driver's focused car. And so this is definitely a little bit more sporty than the last generation, which was really not that sporty in my opinion. So part of this is something that Lexus calls Lexus Driving Signature, and that is in development on the racetrack, and it's basically the way you use the controls, the way the feedback is, everything is sort of equal. So you've got feedback from the steering wheel, feedback from the brakes, and this is all, you know, what they tell us and what they say, but when we take it out on the road, let's see how much is marketing speak and what this thing really drives like. All right, you're a professional actor. What's your line?
Yep. All right, ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
So, Eric, what are we in now?
500H F Sport Performance. You know what the H stands for?
What?
Hell yeah.
Oh,
Active sound control. Dual motors. Whoa. Yeah, she's pretty quick, huh? Ready for the braking test?
Yeah. Effective.
Effective. So this has 15.7 inch rotors up front compared to the 13.4 of the normal one. So the brakes are pretty good. These are 6-piston and they seem to stop pretty effectively. We've been into the ABS a couple of times. You also get 21-inch wheels and tires with this too. And so we've got a lot more power. We have a motor up front, electric motor integrated into the transmission. We have one in the rear also, and of course we have the gas motor. So total output is 367 horsepower, 406 pound-feet of torque, and this is a full-time all-wheel drive system. So this also has adaptive dampers in here. Adaptive variable suspension is what they like to call it, and I'm definitely getting a lot more transmission of the vibration. I can feel the road surface a lot better here. You can kind of hear it too in these tires. These tires are definitely a little bit noisier, and this is supposed to handle better. So yeah. So this has better seats in it. These seats are, for one thing, they're heated and cooled, but these are the F Sport Performance seats. And what do you think of them?
They're really compact, and I like them. You don't jostle around at all.
Yeah, I think what you mean by compact is they fit tighter around your body, so they tend to hold you in, better lateral support. You know, this is not like a full-on sports car or anything, but this is definitely holding me in a lot better, and there's definitely better lumbar support too. I like the firmness of these seats. So this has a 6-speed transmission. So this, you can use the flappy paddles, which I'll use right now. This is an automatic transmission. You don't get the 8-speed in this, you get the 6-speed, which presumably can handle more torque than the 8-speed transmission can. and kind of hustling around this road. Pretty good for a big, hefty SUV. Not my first choice to go to the track, but this is highly competent. So I like the steering in here. I feel like there's a little bit more steering feedback. I think this is tuned a little bit differently than the other versions of the car. This feels like there's a little bit more steering heft to it. The steering wheel itself is a little bit different, and we got some trim pieces in here. We got a little bit more aluminum on the pedals. I think there's some aluminum accent pieces in here too. There's no wood in the center. We get sort of a black treatment. We also have some Alcantara on the doors, and this has got the black interior, but obviously you can get this in Rioja red, which is the color that, of course, that I would get. So dynamically, this is just so much better than the base version. Lexus has another Japanese word they like to use for the interior. It's called the Tazuna concept, and that is between the rider and horse, where the rider sort of takes the reins. And so in their interpretation here, I love this flowery marketing language that they love to use, that means that everything is oriented towards the driver. So you can see the screen is slightly tilted towards the driver. You can see that, well, everything is sort of angled towards the driver. It sort of surrounds you a little bit. It's not exactly a jet fighter kind of cockpit, but everything does fall really close to hand. All the controls are really nicely in reach. This is the Premium Plus interior that I'm sitting in this 350 hybrid, and it has this sort of bamboo style finish here, which I really like. And this color combination is called macadamia. So you have sort of an off cream color on the top of the doors. You've got this sort of chocolate color inlays over the doors where the buttons are. And you've got a little bit of black accents everywhere. So there's a lot of white in here, or off-white, I should say. The headliner is the sort of nice off-white. Looks like a fairly high-end cabin to me. Standard, you get 12 speaker sound. This particular one has the optional Mark Levinson audio system, which sounds fantastic. And there's a fair bit of storage space up here too. So in the doors, you've got a pretty large binnacle. You can put water bottles in there. And in the front, ahead of the driver, you've got another fairly deep binnacle. You can put a couple of phones in there. You've got wireless charging, and in the center console, it opens up two ways. So you can have it open up either from the driver's side, or if you're a nosy passenger, you want to see what's in there, you can open up from the passenger side too. Now, all of these vehicles have this center infotainment display. The base is 9.8 inches. All the screens that we have here today look like they're 14. It's pretty big, it's pretty bright, and this is your central interface that you're going to use to control pretty much everything in the vehicle. So if you like big screens, you're going to dig this. If you don't, they're coming anyhow for you. The big screens are coming for you. So wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto are now standard across the line, and all the vehicles come with a plethora of USB ports. You've got several USB-C ports, the little small ones up front, including also a traditional USB-A port. You can use your phone as a key. I'm not sure if that's an option or if that is standard, but there's an app that you can use, which you can use to start the car. And this whole interface, this Lexus interface, is brand new. This is developed in North America, in Texas, for the North American market. And it uses Google Maps for the mapping technology. And driving around so far, it seems to work pretty well. If there are updates they want to push down, if there's bug fixes, perhaps even some minor interface updates in the future, this can all be done over the air. And this is the way Lexus has been moving. They debuted this system in the NX, which is the little baby brother to this RX. Lexus does have a fourth powertrain, which is a plug-in hybrid. Now, we were able to drive it, but it won't be available at dealers as early as the other three main powertrains. It's called the 450H Plus. Cameraman Ryan, do you know what we're driving on right now?
Feels like we're hovering through space.
That's right, because we are driving on a wave of electrons, because this is the 450H Plus plug-in hybrid, which will be available sometime later. They haven't made that available. So right now,
There's no sound.
it says I'm going 49 kilometers an hour. These apparently have just arrived off the boat from Japan. They haven't even been driven around very much. So plug-in hybrid. I think what we can expect here, even though they haven't given us the details, if we extrapolate from other Toyota products, this is going to be the same powertrain as you find in the RAV4 plug-in hybrid. So I'm pretty sure that means we get about 304 horsepower, we get about an 18 kilowatt hour battery, and we should be able to go somewhere around 37 miles on a single charge. So what's cool about the plug-in hybrids is that you can drive this around the city, and if your commute to work is, let's say, 30 miles or something like that, you can just drive around, charge up at home, which is going to be way less expensive than gas, and it's going to be very, very inexpensive to run. So it basically works like an electric car. Overall, this is a very quiet cabin. As you can hear, in fact, this is probably the best way to hear this particular cabin. We can have this conversation here, even though you're sort of like Silent Bob. It is super quiet. The ride quality in here is very, very good. It's basically equivalent to the other versions of this, like the 350, the base version. So this has conventional springs. This doesn't have adaptive suspension, as far as I know. Let's do a little acceleration test here and see what it feels like. And right now I'm in pure EV mode, at least I think I am. Let's see what happens when I hit it. Okay, it's not particularly fast in pure EV mode. No, it's not. But when I turn on the gas motor, let's see if I can make that happen. All right, so now it's in HV mode, hybrid mode. I think it's going to choose automatically for me between gas and electric. We'll do a quick little acceleration. So when you want it to get up and go, it does get up and go pretty effectively, I think. You should be able to get pretty good gas mileage in here when you're using it in this hybrid mode. Not sure what the numbers are, but I would think you should be able to achieve somewhere around 36 combined, maybe 36 on the highway. They don't have the final numbers on this particular vehicle yet. One thing I will note, this has the optional heads-up display, which means you've got a haptic touchpad on the steering wheel. Now apparently it's customizable, but there is a lot of tech in here, and there is a real lack of buttons pretty much anywhere, including the climate control. So to me, I just wish they had a couple physical buttons for the HVAC system, just my preference. It does have this driver assist package. They call it Lexus Safety System Plus 3.0, the longest name for a driver assistance package ever. But what's really interesting about this is I've got a vehicle ahead of me right now, and if I come up on him a little too quickly, this car will actually slow down to match his speed. And if I go around a corner a little bit too quickly, it'll slow down for me. So it's a pretty active system. It's not overly aggressive by any means. It's not slamming on the brakes, but you will get a little warning. You've got a speedometer warning, which is telling you all the time what your speed is and how that is relative to the actual speed limit. So it's a fairly interactive system. I haven't been able to turn it off yet, but that's probably just because I'm not that familiar with the car. So in the back seat, I'm not a huge guy. I'm 5'9". There seems to be a decent amount of headroom, although I think once you're pushing 6 foot, it might get a little bit tight. And because this is the Premium Plus version, back here, I've got heated and cooled ventilated seats. Anything with leather, you can get the ventilated seats. And this does have 2 USB-C ports over here, and you've got individual climate controls for each of the individual passengers. You got a little bit of storage back here, and knee room is pretty good. This seems pretty comfortable. I think this would be pretty decent for a long road trip, as long as you're not trying to put somebody back here who's like well over 6 foot, but that's somebody else's problem, not mine. So in all the grades, all the models, you get this center armrest with a little fold-out drink holder. That's pretty nice. These seats rear are 60/40 folding, and they're also on a powered button. And in the doors, you've got a fair bit of space here for a bunch of extra stuff, like you could put a couple of water bottles back here too. The rear hatch is powered, and what's cool is this opens 3 seconds faster than the previous generation. It's actually pretty quick. That's quicker than my car. And also back here, you've got a 1,220 volt, 1,500 watt power outlet, which right there, so you can plug in your boombox or whatever you want to power. I'm not sure what you power. It's getting warm out here. So there's actually a lot more cargo space back here than the last generation. This now has 38.5 cubic feet. It's actually up 6 cubic feet, which is really quite a bit. So there's a lot more space back here. I have not opened up the floor here. Let's see what's underneath here. Looks like we got, hey, not a full-size spare, and a battery back here. So not a lot of extra space. but there's definitely a lot more space than before. And of course, it does have this little thing that you can pop over, this privacy cover too. There's two buttons to close the hatch over here. One is just to close it. The other one is the lock and walk away. So if you hit this button and you got the key in your pocket, when you walk away, when the hatch closes, the whole car is gonna lock. Kind of a cool feature. This is the base interior, and it's actually not significantly different than the Premium Plus, at least from a visual standpoint. Now you do have a smaller screen. This is the 9.8-inch screen, and it's definitely not as big, and it's square looking, so it doesn't look quite as big and fancy, I guess you could say. And this definitely has more piano glossy black plastic in the middle here over the center binnacle. This has heated seats. They all have heated seats. And if you get the Premium Plus, you can move up to heated and cooled seats, at least in the back. And the fact that this is base, I think it looks pretty respectable. The 2023 RX is an incredibly important vehicle for Lexus. It is their top-selling vehicle, and in fact, it is the top-selling vehicle in the luxury midsize SUV segment. So you know they gotta get it right, and they have put a lot of thought and attention to detail in this. If you're coming from a current generation or a previous generation RX, I think you're gonna like this a lot. It is not as floaty and as soft as the old school versions. This strikes a more appropriate balance, I think, between sport and luxury. Well, it's never overly soft and never overly floaty. It's also never overly sporty either. They'll get everything from the entry-level 350 all the way up to the 500H, and that means there's something for everyone. So I think they really got it right this time. And if you enjoyed this video and you found it helpful, please go ahead and subscribe. There's another video on screen. You can click on that too. My name is Eric. Thanks for watching.